I remember being at John Huffman's event and I saw you from the corner of the room and I didn't say anything to you because I was too embarrassed to talk to you because of the way I looked and the way my mind was at that time. I was so distraught. I was an emotional wreck.
One of the best antidepressants you could ever do is physical movement. You preach on determination, you preach on like having it all together, but unfortunately when you get busy in life, a lot of things tend to go on the back burner.
I was literally on the couch in a blanket, hiding from the world.
You age, your T levels get below a certain point and you lose that drive, you lose that motivation, you lose just who you are, you get frustrated with the world, just all stress compiles.
What happened quickly for me going through your programs and listening to you and your staff was my mind woke up. I became less angry.
We all have crap in our life or things that have happened, but when you're not healthy, you're eating bad and you're not sleeping, it magnifies it tenfold.
What's up, everybody? I'm here today with my good friend, Jeff Delaney. He's a founder of T-Clinic and Nuviva. And a lot of times I've spoken over the last year about my journey with getting back in shape, being healthy mentally and physically, and how it's done tremendous things for my show and my business side of it. And, so today I have Jeff Delaney on, and man, I'm just so happy to have you on the show finally. And bro, you've changed my life. And I just want to thank you.
Man, listen, that's the least I could do. That's kind of why I do what I do, is to just try to hopefully make a positive impact, and more than just my close sphere of people. So like seeing a friend actually kind of get back on track. And, I'm excited. Just thanks for having me first off, because your show is crushing it, man.
Thanks,
like, you're doing so good.
It's a blur, but
yeah.
We're having fun.
Listen, but I see you're just pushing it further and better. And just, I'm excited to see where this thing keeps going.
Dude, you and me both, man. I was just sitting here and we had this conversation yesterday on the phone. It's like pushing it so much, you can start to go backwards a little bit, because it's like, when you get so busy and you're constantly filming, constantly doing something, the other side of it does tend to suffer, like the 5 days in the gym turn to 2 days, maybe to 3 days. And it's just super inconsistent. So the one thing that I love about your businesses, Nuviva and even T-Clinics, is the community portion. It's the accountability and the things that I get to do on a weekly basis going in there, which I said off air, I need to get back in there. Yeah. You need to do that. Like, I'm committing to it, but.
Well, I'm excited. Listen, not just for that, but to get Shawn to the 3.0. I always look forward to that portion, and we'll talk about that. But
that's the thing, dude. It's like, you've taken me, and because people, listen, I had this show on discipline and determination, right? And I've said it 1,000 times, but never with you, in front of the microphone. Like, I had this brand that I was selling, which is determination and discipline, like I said, but the only place I was displaying that was in the show. I looked a fat mess. And I'm not saying that you have to be in great shape in order to be successful, but for me, my mental was, there was moments that I couldn't get off the couch unless I was filming. And it's so funny. And I don't know if I've told you this story yet, but it's about you.
Okay.
And it's about you. Yeah. And I remember being at John Huffman's event and I saw you from the corner of the room and I didn't say anything to you because I was too embarrassed to talk to you because of the way I looked and the way my mind was at that time. I was so withdrawn and even scared to talk to people that I knew. And then you grabbed your lunch and you came up and you're like, hey, what's up? And then that's when it started.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people, like, obviously, if you know me, I'm the last person to judge someone. Mm-hmm. And just to kind of give you some grace too on what you just said, prior to that is like, you preach on determination, you preach on like having it all together. But unfortunately, when get busy in life, a lot of things tend to go on the back burner. And it's like, you're never going to have perfect harmony or balance. Like when you're trying to really focus on something or grow something. So you just got to find like, where can you get some consistency? And like I said, if your exercise or your training, because things are so busy, go to the back burner, you just tweak the plan, you adjust it. So you got to still put in some effort and some work, but it's common. You're not the only person. Trust me. I'm in this business. I've been in this business forever. I've done this my whole life. And there are seasons where my stuff goes to the back burner. So I just, and that's something we need to talk about, is just you restructure that plan so it fits your life and fits your current schedule. And then once you get past that season, you readjust per like how much you could put into it. So you just find a little bit of balance, even though there's never going to be 100% balance.
The thing that suffers for me, and that's what I really want you to dive into for the men listening, and for even women listening and watching, to help their husbands or their young sons, maybe in their 20s, 30s, is the thing that really went south for me is my mental state. Dude, again, I want to go back to those moments where I was literally on the couch in a blanket, hiding from the world. And the only time that I was present was on camera, because I was so distraught. I was an emotional wreck. And what happened quickly for me, going through your programs and listening to you and your staff, was I changed my nutrition. I started getting the treatments. I started getting consistent with my TRT replacement therapy. I started doing those GLP-1s. And I do want to touch on those today, because those aren't a Pangea. They're not a cure-all. You gotta work while you're on them. But the moment I started implementing that routine, my mind woke up. I became less angry. And I'm sure, because we've been friends for a long time, my show used to have a lot of fillers in there called the F word, and a lot of anger coming through. And then once I was on week 1, that started to go down. I can remember the last show that was riddled with curse words, and that was the Joe Pavich episode. And then shortly after that, it started just to go like this, in a good way, where I was being more articulate. I was having better conversation. I didn't need those words to express how I felt. And you were a big part of that.
I appreciate that,
man. Yeah, man.
Well, I think one of the biggest things for both men and women, more so men, we get past a certain age, and I think hormones is probably the biggest anchor in the water for a lot of people. Is like, you age, your T levels get below a certain point, and you lose that drive, you lose that motivation, you lose just who you are. You kind of, things bother you more. You get frustrated with the world. Just all stress compiles tenfold when your hormones aren't right. Now, there's a flip side of that, obviously taking too much or, not being dosed properly, you could create some other problems as well. But true hormone therapy, or I always say, hormone balancing, when you get that right, especially for a guy, like that kind of halts the deterioration process, how we are physically, mentally, emotionally. It has such a positive cascade effect in people's lives to get your hormones balanced. And like you said, you probably were tired, lethargic, frustrated with the world. Things bothered you that probably would have never bothered you before. And it's like, that's probably one of the biggest anchors, I think, for guys is getting that done right. Because once again, you've done hormone therapy. Sometimes therapy done wrong, it's good for the short haul. And I always kind of use car analogies. It's like when you redline a car, it's fun, but eventually things start to break. And so that's kind of like where, no matter where you go, or if you ever get hormone therapy, just make sure they're being specific to you, because that's where it gets better as you age versus good for the front end. And then kind of things start falling apart if you're not managing it appropriately or dosing it appropriately. So, I think for you, that was one thing that just needed to be tweaked, was get your hormones back in line, and you see just your mental state, how you are emotionally starts fixing. Then kind of, as a cascade of that is, you get motivated to get back to do the things you want to do. I think a lot of guys, when their hormones are off, they put in the work, or they try to put in the work. They go to the gym, they exercise, but they get very little ROI because the hormones are tanked. And it's like, you're like, well, shoot, I'm putting in the work, I'm doing A, B, and C, and I'm not seeing anything come from it. And that's kind of where a lot of guys get frustrated, and they're just like, F it. And,
I think there's a lot of noise too, right? There's a lot of noise on the internet. There's a lot of, every single fitness coach you talk to, every single clinic you talk to has a different, I guess, viewpoint on what proper nutrition is, right? Like, I remember when I was going carnivore for so long, I felt the best. But then someone's like, well, you need at least, your brain needs at least 120 grams of carbohydrates a day to even function. Like, you're killing your brain, and that's why you're getting sick. And I'm not saying that's wrong, right? But for me, the best I've ever felt in my life was when I was the modified carnivore, right? I was doing a ton of protein, and I was doing fruits. and I felt amazing, but there's so much noise. I mean, there's men listening right now. They don't know what to do because it seems so big, right? Because they look at that where they're at right now and they want to go straight forward to that end goal, like that Shawn 3.0 or that Jeffrey 3.0, whatever their name is. They want to go straight to that. And they have to understand that, look, this is a process and you need to go on small wins. You need to have the right meal. Then you need to go to the gym, and then you need to have another good meal and stack these wins. And then all of a sudden at the end of the week, you're like, oh my God, I'm down 5 pounds. This is fantastic. Now I keep it going. But like, what would you say to the man that is just so confused right now? It may not have the support available like a Nuviva or a T clinic, someone that they trust. Cause I think that's a big thing.
Yeah.
But the other side of it is too, like there's a lot of monetary restrictions for men and women in this world right now. What would you say to them to be like, hey, this is where you start. If you can't do all this, this is what you should do.
Honestly, that's a great point. I think first off, with the world we live, and you just said, there's the information overload.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people tend to now it's like, all right, well, this guy's telling me to do this. This person's saying go in carnivore. This person says go keto. This person says I have to have 120 grams of carbs. People get paralysis by analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel bad for a lot of the people. Find a resource of information first off that's pretty consistent and accurate, because unfortunately there's a lot of inaccurate information out there, especially through social media. And then going into like what you were talking about, I hate when somebody goes all in overnight.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of that.
Yeah.
Like let's look at the food, for me, I always say 80% is nutrition. I mean, that's going to change your life drastically, right? So let's try to get a little bit better with the food. Let's maybe move a little bit, because if you go all in, it'll never stick. It's never going to be a lifestyle change or a habit. So, I like to just almost like, I use an analogy, like put the frog in the water. Let's just turn up the heat over time. And then you end up picking up those proper habits. Eat a little bit better. You start stacking those small little wins, and those little wins over time is going to be a big ass win. It
sure is, man.
Just most people don't have, I used to see it all the time. Clients would go like, it's the new year. I'm going to go up, new year, new me. And they go from 0 to 60. They freaking go from eating like complete crap to like something super, super strict. And they go to the gym and they're putting in 5 or 6 days a week, and they get results. But then eventually sometimes going too hard works against you metabolically. They get stuck, and then they're putting in the work. They're not seeing the ROI. And then what happens? They have a break, they give up, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, they're in a worse off position. It's almost they rebound harder. They metabolically, they mess up their metabolism. So, if you're looking to get started, start by, getting consistent with your food. One of the best things you can do is just make sure you have a minimum breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And we'll talk, because some people could do 3 meals, 3 snacks. Some people could do 3 meals a day. Some people say I want an intermittent fast, which there's, depending on the person and the place, there's a place for it. But just get consistent with meals. Try to start cleaning up some of your food. I always say every meal should have a little bit of protein. That should be a staple of your diet. That's going to maintain muscle. It's going to help you kind of body composition change. And start just with a little bit of tweaks. Maybe get away from some processed food to more whole foods. Good. Now let's go, okay, what can you do per week? If you want to do, strength train, maybe we're going to do 3 days a week. And just build your schedule get that traction, get that snowball going. And then as you feel better, you function better, then you start adding a little bit. But I would rather you do it over time to where it's not so drastically different than what you're going to do, and make sure it fits your schedule. Because if it doesn't fit your schedule, there's no way in how you're going to keep doing it.
It's true, man. And the one thing, like, and I think men and just women, humans in general can relate to this. As your schedule gets busier, because I'm experiencing this. Like, there's moments where I haven't had enough protein today, and it's almost noon, right? I'll go home, I'll do a protein shake, hit the gym, right? And then after that, I'm like, oh gosh, so what happens is when I'm underfed the whole day, what happens at night, right? Like all I want is chocolate.
Yeah.
Like all I want is cookies. And I'm starting to fall back into that. I had like 1.5 cookies last night. And for you guys, 1.5 cookies is bad. No, I'm talking Crave cookies.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna be real. Like, I had
700 calorie dense cookie.
Yeah, dude. I mean, like, it was a good ass cookie. But like, I woke up this morning, and even though I slept, you'll be proud of me. I went to bed at 8:30 last night. Okay. I woke up at 6:30. I had like almost 10 hours of sleep, but I'm still not feeling good because of what I put in my body afterwards. So like, I really want to focus on that too, is like, how can we get those cravings to subside in the evening time?
One of the best and easiest things you could do is never let yourself get to the effort point when it comes to hunger. And that's the big problem. That's why, you know, most people over the years would come in and they're not eating all day. They got busy in life, kids, work, school, and they started missing meals. And then what happens is you get to the evening time, you're so hungry, your willpower goes out the window. I don't care. Listen, if I did that.
It's decision fatigue. We've talked about this before.
So, you know, don't ever let yourself get to the hunger effort point. And that's, you know, the easiest way to break that is have consistent meals. Now, you're going to say, well, I'm busy, I got this going on. You almost have to plan. You at least plan your day, have quick, fast little things that you could take with you, a protein shake, a protein bar, you know, just have something on hand. So you, worst case, if it's something quick, it's something is better than nothing. Plus metabolically, you know, a lot of people, I think over the years have fell into like intermittent fasting, and they turned intermittent fasting into like, I'm not going to eat all day because that's what I'm already doing. And then they crush food. And there's so many disadvantages to that. So, you know, I'm of the thought, like small, frequent meals, if you can, you know, just basics, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Make sure you have a good high protein at breakfast, which will set your day to be in a good spot. Most people could at least somewhat get a breakfast going. You know, try to have something that, if you're busy, have something quick, fast, midday, but never let yourself get to the hunger effort point. Is number one. You know, whether you're having carbohydrates or no carbohydrates, you know, that I think that for a lot of people, the more carbs you eat, you tend to want more carbohydrates. You know, to go back to what you were saying too, is like, oh, you got to have some carbohydrates. We could live without carbohydrates. I prefer keto, like more ketogenic / carnivore. I just think a lot of people, depend on your overall goal. If you're a high level athlete, you probably need carbohydrates. But if you're the average person living, like probably one of the best things you could do is keep your carbohydrates low, your simple sugars low. You know, there's data after data and studies that support that all day long. I wouldn't eat that way if I didn't feel that was probably one of the best ways as far as keeping your overall carbohydrates simple. Now there's a time and a place where I love sprinkling them in, and we did it with you, is even if you're going low carbohydrates, I am really big into bookend the workout time with some carbs, so you could actually replenish and kind of support what you did in the gym. But outside of that, you could live without carbohydrates. You can't live without, you know, certain things. But, well, you can. You just not.
That's the thing, dude. And I think it's different probably for everybody, but I was thriving on that plan. Like I felt very energetic, and you know, it was high protein, high fats. And it was just every morning I was just waking up leaner and leaner and leaner. And it's hard to just switch, to your point, and go all back in. So for me right now, like, you know, I did have some bread this morning and I had some eggs, you know, so for me, it's like super important to start going, okay, high protein the rest of the day to get back onto that track. Because, you know, all I know is if I do it for like 3 days, I automatically tighten up now because there's that baseline. But for the man listening that doesn't have that baseline now, they need little, like, I always call it like the blowing up the balloon, right? Little pieces of motivation and drive, because we know motivation is going to fade, and then the discipline and determination has to push you through. But like, I keep thinking back to when I started. The hardest thing for me was to go to the gym looking and feeling the way I did. No one's looking at you. No one cares.
They
but
got
you
more
think that,
important
like,
shit going on.
People have more. They're caught up in their own shit. Trust me. But like, just going and doing it and not worrying about how you feel. Like the next day, you're going to feel better. I don't know where I'm going with this, but I just feel like those things need to be said, because even though, I mean, I'm probably up 10, maybe 15, but if I go to the gym, I still feel strong. You know, like I feel much stronger. But at the same time, I still struggle with, man, I just don't look and feel the way I did. I have, you know, you see my point, right? It's like, I got to get back on track.
I think, you know, kind of to touch on that too, is one of the best antidepressants you could ever do is physical movement. And once again, like it's funny how I see a lot of things now are coming to the market. I mean, I've been in this space 25 years and more from a medical standpoint, 20 years. And like, but there is no better thing you could do for your mental health than just move. Even if it's something so simple as taking a walk for the day. Don't tell me you don't feel better after you do it.
Yeah.
So, I think that's a thing, I always say the 4 pillars, when it comes to just overall like health across the board, your sleep, which is a game changer if you could do it. I actually that was one of the pillars I lacked on for years just because I was grinding and I'm building businesses and like looking back, I would have prioritized sleep better just because that's, our body fixes the damage we cause during the day, hormones, everything across the board. If you're sleeping like crap, your life's going to suck the next day on all levels. Your nutrition, eating a little better. I'm not saying eating chicken and broccoli, but like having, a staple of protein with the meals, you could fill it with the macronutrients. Plus, if you do that, you'll have less of the other stuff you probably shouldn't have. Your nutrition obviously is a big one. I always say that's 80% when it comes to aesthetics or body composition. As far as physical movement, that's going to be just getting active 3 days a week. I mean, personally, I try to do something every day. Even if I don't have time, I'll try to do like a 10-minute, like you could do burpees or something just to move.
Yeah.
You'll feel better about the little bit of activity you did for the day. And then last is mental health, and that's a big one that, it depends on what you got going on in your life, previous, situations in your life. But a lot of times if you get feeling better about yourself, your body composition, you're going to be okay. And there's a lot of that, I think, weighs into a lot of the mental health side. Like we all have shit going on. We all have crap in our life or things that have happened. But when you're not healthy, you're eating bad and you're not sleeping, it magnifies it tenfold.
Yeah. It's interesting. And I don't think you've read the book. You may have, but Prof G wrote this book, newer book called, excuse me, Notes on Being a Man. And what he really talks about is, his early stages of being a father of 2 boys and going through things. And he just talks about how men these days in the way society is, it's men are not being, I don't want to misquote him, but it's harder to be a man.
Yeah. Right.
And then when a man doesn't have a relationship, like a woman cannot have a relationship. Like he saw a clip with him talking on The View, like a woman can have a cat and she's fine. Yeah. She's fine. She can go dive into the relationships with her friends, but a man needs a relationship because without relationship, men start turning to other vices like porn, being withdrawn on technology, diving into conspiracy theories. And we see that, and that's never, it's never good. What are your thoughts on, how your business and your overall plans can help men with that problem?
I think it's one goes back to, them from a system standpoint, hormones being balanced, just kind of doesn't let a lot of that other stuff compile. Having some discipline in what they do, have a support system behind them. Like, guys, we need positive reinforcement or positive affirmations. And, I feel like if you don't have, any type of like, whether it's a relationship with your buddy or your wife or a girlfriend or, it's like we need kind of to have that positive like interaction with people. And without it, like you said, like we tend to, we kind of go in our little hole. We kind of become a hermit, and next thing you know, you're addicted to other things, or you just your attention span goes to things that you probably shouldn't focus on. Yeah. So, I feel like for us, it's, we look at it's going back to your self-image and how you feel about yourself. And then ultimately, if you could get back to where you feel yourself, obviously hormone wise, you feel like a man. It sucks though, because like a lot of times in the world we live today, they, regular masculinity has been coined as toxic masculinity.
Yes, let's go there.
And so, I think a lot of guys, like a man's considered toxic now, which is so not. Now you have the toxic masculinity, but it's not even close to what people coined toxic masculinity as today. So, I kind of had that shirt, toxic masculinity.
It's my favorite one, by the way.
Yeah. I actually got a new one coming out. Okay. So I got you on that. So, but it's hard because like, guys of our past, like back then, like they were the provider and the father and the husband and like, just overall were a good male. And now it's like, you have women like coining that as toxic or groups coining that as toxic. So it's just, it's sad. But, just getting ourselves back to just being the provider and the leader and, just.
Well, he talks about that too.
Yeah.
he talks about that. Like, it even goes into saying that, you know, since the 1980s, men through 20 years old to 24-year-olds, unemployment and lack of, you know, college education has tripled.
Yeah.
It's tripled. And like, he also goes in to say, and I want your take on this. If the man is not okay, the family struggles.
Oh yeah.
The kids, I believe that. And like, I'm sorry. Like, when I struggle, it's not good for my wife. It's not good for my 3 beautiful children.
Yep. I agree 110%. You know, I feel like, you know, we're supposed to be kind of leading, providing, setting the example, you know, obviously fathering our kids a certain way. You know, I feel like when guys are not even good themselves, they tend to not be in a good example for the kids, or they just get less involved with the kids. As a husband, I feel like, once again, if they're turning to other things because they're, you know, how do you want to say it? I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on it. Like
medicating?
Well, no, like as far as like their personal self-image, you know, and it's like, now they're not being that husband and that man of the house to be able to lead the house and kind of keep things, you know, in check.
Yeah.
You know, so it definitely compiles on the marriage and the kids. And it's just, but once again, it goes back to the guy not feeling good about himself.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be, you know, 6-pack abs and, you know, just crushing weights and, you know, but I think, you know, getting back to the fundamentals of being a man and a father and a husband is almost a must. And if not, you definitely will. It's probably going to end up in a broken marriage or a divorce. You're not going to have a good relationship with your kids because you put a lot of stuff on the back burner because you just don't. You end up not feeling good enough to do the other stuff you should be doing.
But I'm glad we're talking about this, because when I think of what he was saying about, if the man's not okay, the family's not okay. And there's groups, like you said, that are really vocal in combating that. I don't need a man. I don't need a man to do this for me. I can do it myself, which they absolutely can. I'm not saying that, but, you know, I think in a family environment, it is super important to get back to the roots of the family structure. And when I'm okay, I can handle extra activities. I can handle extra asks. When I'm not okay, I melt down.
Yep. And sometimes the way you react to that,
is the right word,
to the wife or to the kids. Yeah. And then those are like little things that cause damage to that family environment, that family relationship as you age. You know, and not for nothing, man, as a man, if I'm not doing that stuff, I feel less of a man, you know, and that compiles on you as far as, you know, like,
dude, that's a great point, because I've been really working on my training schedule. I really don't want to go at 4 a.m. anymore because I don't have to, you know, but I'm still caught in this weird quandary. Like, if I don't go at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. or whatever it is I normally go,
your schedule takes over.
My schedule takes over. Or if I don't, I guilt myself.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, well, now I got to go and I got to fit in this workout, also get dinner prepped, also because we have my daughter's Kid Strong tonight that I know I'm going to. All these things stack up, and it's just almost like, oh my God, it's really pointing out like, dude, you're just not prepared right now.
Yeah.
This is all on you.
And this is, I mean, that's probably a big problem why guys try to put an unrealistic plan to their schedule. And then when they don't hit it, they almost beat themselves up, and that makes things worse. So, you know, what I talked to you about the other day is like, I love catching up, and it's hard because I don't get to see a lot of clients. Obviously, you're my friend. So we're going to dive in a little bit deep, but you kind of you need to look at your schedule. You need to see where it can happen and where it can't happen. And then once you know, like, all right, per 2 days a week or 3 days a week or 5 days a week, like where your gaps are that you know are going to be pretty consistent, because you should have somewhat consistency. Obviously, with the family and kids, sometimes the kids stuff takes over, and so there's going to be times you have to drop. But figure what that basic looks like, and then how can I optimize that basic time that I could put in, and let it fit your time and your schedule. Like, I do a lot of like circuit work, so my workouts are 25 minutes. You know, luckily, lately I used to go at 4 a.m. and I, you know, over the last probably 8 weeks, I was still taking my son to the gym and working out with him. And now I'm kind of at a point where yeah, I don't want to push him because sometimes kids push back, but I was like, if you want, I'll work out with you. And it's not as hard as I'd work out, but I'm getting that family time, that father son time, but I'm also killing two birds with one stone. So like now I have him working out with me. We're kind of bonding and doing our thing, and I'm able to make it fit versus getting up at 4 a.m. And then if I didn't get up because, I have such a short period of time in the morning, then I'd beat myself up about not being able to go. And then I was taking him, but I still wasn't training. So like, just find what your schedule looks like. And it's going to move as you're going. Like you're going to be in a season right now. You're crushing it on the, as a father, as a husband, as Shawn French, it's like, let's find out where it could always happen.
Yeah.
And we'll change that in a month. And
it's
then,
so, yeah, it's funny because like, I didn't mean to interrupt, but like for me, I always go back to, I don't have to go at 5 a.m, but it's probably best that I do, because if I don't, the day takes over.
Yeah.
A phone call can happen, something last minute that can frustrate me. And then I'm stuck putting out a fire. And then it's like, I don't have any,
right.
No, what am I going to do? Lift for, it's 15 minutes away. That's a half an hour out of my day. So like, there's a lot of games that I can play with myself later on in the day, whereas I really can't do that. I know if I go at 5, LA opens at 5, I can lift from 5 to 5:45, be back at the house by 6, and then I can help get the kids ready. And then I'm refreshed.
Yeah.
Right. But it's just getting back into that. I don't have to, I can technically go when I want, but is that going to serve me the best? And I think that's something for each individual. And I'm starting to understand that it actually might serve me better, because it's going to force me to eat better. It's going to force me to get good sleep. I'm up at 4. I'm out the door by 4:45.
And it's done.
It is done.
That's what I liked about it. But I've kind of, if it wasn't for my son, I would go early, because if not, my schedule's going to take over.
Yeah.
Plus you kind of, there's something to be said, man. Me going physically, doing something in the morning, my day goes so much better.
Oh, hell yeah, it does,
like,
dude.
I crush 10 times more things than I would do if I just try to roll into a regular day.
Yeah, you're productive. You're rolling, dude. One of the biggest things, dude, I want to get into is I think there was a big component of GLP-1s in my treatment that were very, very successful. But I also want to touch on that, because a lot of people think, okay, I'm just going to take these GLP-1s, these Ozempics, the Tirzepatides, whatever it is, and that's it. What can happen to somebody if they just take it and they don't work out, they don't eat well? What are some of the dangers?
So I'll tell you, man, with GLP-1s, it's crazy where that world's gone. A big pharma brought that to the market. It was, semaglutide or Ozempic or Wegovy was, brought originally for type 2 diabetes. There's GLP-1s have been around forever, right? You have way back in 2014, 15, liraglutide, dulaglutide. There, you could go back to even further before that. They just not any one GLP had the results that Ozempic did. And what happened, so Ozempic, came to the market. They were going through their 60-some week trial, and, people lost a crap ton of weight. I mean, it was crazy amounts. So like, they're looking at this like, holy cow, like, what's going on here? Why is this one producing? Well, GLP-1 slow down gastric emptying. So you end up, kind of food doesn't move through your stomach as quick. So it does control your appetite. It occupies the GLP-1 receptors in the brain. And there's a lot of studies, even for like the addictive portion of your brain, what GLP-1s can do. And they saw quite a bit of that with semaglutide, which is Ozempic or Wegovy. Wegovy is just class for weight loss. And that's kind of after they saw we were using it for diabetes, but now there's a market for weight loss. They just renamed it, right? But that GLP-1 had such a pronounced effect on like gastric emptying, gastric slowdown. People were not feeling as hungry. They were satiated early in a meal. And so a lot of those people lost a lot of weight. But the problem, and I always say with the GLP-1s, the poisons in the portion, because a lot of people have taken diabetic dosing and lost a crap ton of weight, but all they did different, it was basically they were on a starvation diet. It got them to the point where they didn't think about food. They didn't eat. It just enabled them to starve. And, hence the Ozempic face and the Ozempic butt, because it's muscle loss. It's not from that particular thing, but it allowed them to starve. And that starvation created those problems. And, unfortunately, I'm having to clean it up now over the years because, they've progressed from semaglutide to Tirzepatide, which is partially GLP-1 with the gastroinhibitory peptide, just helps the pancreas better.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have, soon to be out on the market, stage 2 right now is retatrutide.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people keep classing that as like, it's going to be better. I'm actually going to do a breakdown video to show like, it's not that it's better. Each one has their own little properties, and it depends on the person and how you apply it. Unfortunately, the world's just been taking diabetic dose, 1 shot a week, scale it, double it after a month. And what's happened is people have starved a lot of weight off, and they're metabolically damaged. No different if they did it without a GLP. It just made it a lot easier for them to do that.
Yeah.
And so they're malnourished. They lost a lot of muscle tissue. The metabolism's in the dirt. Now what happens when they stop taking it? What happens when they start eating food? And I'm already seeing it, like people are rebounding and gaining a lot of weight because they didn't focus on nutrition. They didn't have the foundation set right. Nor even if they did, per the way they were dosed, they probably wouldn't have stuck. They would have just not ate. And so the poison's definitely in the portion with that. I think they're amazing. So they are peptides. They're, peptides are chains of aminos or sequence of aminos that initiate response in the body to happen that sometimes don't happen as we age, medical condition, lifestyle. And so with a lot of those, those peptides, that helps the pancreas, it helps carbohydrate metabolism because it was meant for diabetes. It fixes A1C and insulin resistance. But by taking too much, a lot of people in the world have been able to just starve.
Yeah.
Yeah, done right, and I'd like to think we probably have applied it the best way over the years. I mean, I used to use dulaglutide and liraglutide, wasn't nowhere near close to, semaglutide or tirzepatide, but, it does quiet the food noise drastically. It definitely kind of kills the addiction portion of the brain. So like people that are having like addictions to certain things outside of just food get better, but it's allowed me to give people the dietary discipline to a plan, and ultimately the vehicle is going to be the food. It's forever going to be the food. If you think it's anything else, like you're going to be in a bad position. But it's allowed me to get people to actually adhere to a plan, and so we adjust it very specific to the person. But the poison is in the portion with that stuff, and I think that's why the world gravitated to it, because I could take a shot and I'm not going to eat. I'm not hungry. And I stopped doing all the stuff that was causing me to be overweight, but, taking too much or done wrong without the proper vehicle. You'll see some results. You're going to feel better, but you're going to probably have some issues. I think, and I know you were asking like about the people just to go to that. Like you should be screened. You should make sure you don't have, there's certain things medically that you should be checked up. Now I'm seeing like, tanning salons selling semaglutide, and it's all over the internet,
it's wild, bro.
So it just be cautious. I think the biggest thing with that is the application has to be done a certain way. And if done right, I'm going to say this, and I hate medication. It's probably one of the most remarkable things for me to allow someone to stick to a plan. I've used over the years low dose phentermine, and it would quiet the food noise and it would actually control their appetite. But this one's working so differently, and you're fixing a lot of things like insulin resistance, the metabolic, how things are processed, lipid metabolism. It's allowed me to do things much, much faster, and hopefully get people to that end goal, and then teach them how to reverse out of that the right way.
I just thank you for that. And thank you for educating the audience, because for me, it was more about, really diving into how to properly utilize these in your plan, your day to day, because a lot of people are just taking that as the cure all shot, and they're not lifting. Like you said, Ozempic face,
Ozempic butt,
Ozempic butt. I think I have Ozempic ass.
I call that Nacidol. No Acidol.
More squats.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, it deteriorates your muscle, because if you're starving, your muscle's going to liquefy. It's gone. Yeah. Right. So you may be losing muscle, but fat, you're losing weight, but you're skinny fat at that point. So what's the difference? You're still not confident in a bathing suit on that vacation with your family. And that is a big part of men's mental health too, and even women. And I want to touch on women real quick, but feeling confident, feeling lean, have good body composition. What's the point of losing all the weight if you're losing your muscle too?
Right.
Something big happened recently. The FDA is removing all warning labels for women's hormone replacement therapy. What is that? What is your thought process on that?
I'm a proponent. I love hormone therapy for men or women when it's needed. Number two, done specifically. Guys are pretty simple. We can manage guys manage the testosterone, manage the estrogen. We're simple,
Mm-hmm.
more ways than
Women
once.
are much more complicated with their stuff. Yeah.
And so, you know, I've seen the boom over the last probably 5 years in the space that I'm in. You know, a lot of people are starting to offer female hormone therapy, and I think it's amazing. You know, usually women early in life, sometimes they need just little progesterone. In the 40s, maybe some testosterone, progesterone. After, you know, postmenopausal, probably all three with estrogen. But with that, you have to be super careful because you got to worry about cervical cancer, uterine cancer, breast cancer. And unfortunately, it's not just like a guy like take some tests and you're better.
Yeah.
Like there's byproduct that needs to be managed. And if not managed right, it opens up the door to some issues. But that study, you know, I think a lot of females have been worried, and most providers have put it out there over the years that like, no, you don't want to touch hormones because, you know, breast cancer, ovarian cancer. There's so many issues linked with it. It was one flawed study from a long time ago. You not managing your hormones is worse than you manage them and keeping them homeostatic. And so, you know, I think it's a step in the right direction. I still think for females, like that's a special skill set, and it has to be super precise if you really want to get the good and mitigate some of the bad. That's something that, you know, females definitely make sure the provider's well trained, because, you know, it's not just take this and here we go. It's take this and then other things adjust. So you need to treat it all the way down the line. So I do always put that caution there. Done wrong could create problems.
Yeah.
So, you know, but I do think it's a step in the right direction. I think that them removing that is great. Should have been a long time ago.
Yeah. I mean, I'm seeing it all over the you know, social media apps. Like, you know, people are speaking out about it, saying, well, this is actually good. Like, this is going to help women. It's going to help, you know, postmenopausal. It's going to help a lot of different things. Whereas before it was kind of demonized for them, I believe.
Yeah. No, so I think there was, once again, they put it as like, this is a big no-no. Most providers would never even touch it. You know, even over the last, I would say 5 years, you know, if you got maybe your OBGYN that would understand it and was willing to kind of go outside the normal box and start treating it. But no, like, you know, once again, it goes back to keeping yourself homeostatic. For females when things are off, especially just even at an early age. I see a lot of females like in their 30s, progesterone's off, they got anxiety, they're not sleeping as good. Testosterone, women need testosterone too, just for their drive, how they function, sex drive, mental clarity, same things that we need testosterone for. Just making sure they don't need as much as we take. You know,
you don't want to do that.
So, and then estrogen, you know, I think that's a big one where a lot of people get scared because, like, you know, they're like, oh, you shouldn't take this because your estrogen's going to be off and that's going to create cervical cancer, uterine cancer, breast cancer. It's, once again, not if you do or don't need it. It's what do you specifically need? And getting things, once again, homeostatic, that's the recipe for longevity and health.
I agree with that, because I can remember, you know, like even, you know, my wife would get blood work done and like, oh, no, you're fine. And she goes, well, I don't feel fine. You know, so like there was a lot of providers that are like, I'm not treating you. Like, you're fine. Your blood work's great. She goes, why am I so tired? Why am I going through this? Why am I going through that? You know, and it's like, listen, women need the homeostasis too. They need to be treated.
Yeah. No, I say that's the biggest anchor. Guys, women or men, no different. If hormones are off, it's probably the biggest anchor in the water to how you feel, how you function, how you sleep, the results that you get. So, you know, I think it's nice that there's people are starting to pay attention. You know, it sucks because a lot of the providers were never taught that. They got a small little bit of endocrinology in college, and then whatever their specialty was, they just kind of stayed in that path. And then even endocrinology, you have a lot of them that understand it, did it, but they were not taught to treat it specifically. And so, or a lot of times insurance won't cover it. They won't touch it. I mean, for a guy, if you come in and you're at 299 on your testosterone, and we'll just use a reference range of Quest. If it goes 250, 1100 is normal, they're going to look at you like, Shawn, you're fine. You're okay. You're normal. But that's not
they did
normal.
that to me.
Yeah.
They did that to me. I mean, like my internal medicine doctor's like, oh, you're at 250. You're fine. I'm like, Jeff,
yeah.
Like, is this good?
Yeah.
And you're like, bro, get in.
I see it all the time. But unfortunately, like with insurance, they're not going to touch it unless you're clinically deficient. Well, you were having symptoms and issues well before you were clinically deficient. Most guys, I'll tell you, I've very rarely do I see guys in that are like sub 250 on a testosterone. But it's, there's kind of certain markers where you could tell like this guy's probably, and it's not always just, a lot of guys think with testosterone, it's sex, my sex driver, my erectile function. Like that's such a small piece of it. It's your mental clarity, your motivation, your, just your sleep,
everything.
It literally is once again, it's this thing. It's, we're kind of like a old school wood wagon wheel. And if one piece along that wheel is chipped, we're riding like shit. And so it's like, making sure you're kind of even in that wheel out across the board, not just testosterone or not just growth hormone peptides or not just sleep. It's kind of like it's a complete wheel, a complete circle.
I had my buddy on, and I'm going to say it because like we talked about on my show, so I know it's safe. Larry Hagner, Dad Edge podcast. Awesome dude, man. Like amazing fatherhood platform. And he sat in that seat last week and he talked about his doctor calling him and said, you need to get in here. Your blood work came in. We need to talk. He was scared. He's like, what the heck? He goes, your testosterone level's way too high. He goes, what is it? He goes, it's 900. And he's 50. He goes, are you doing TRT? You need to stop. He goes, I've never taken TRT. So even doctors nowadays get a blood work from a man. And if their testosterone level's at 900 saying that's not good,
right?
Like we got to screen, we got to check you for cancer. It's like, what? It's like, dude.
Yeah. Well, and it's unfortunately a lot of times they don't even look at symptoms or like per this, how do I fix this? Or how do I put a medication on this versus like going to the root and working backwards. But, I always look at it as like, what is optimized? What is ideal? You have normal markers, but where should it be? Where are you going to feel your best? Where can I get you to be your best without creating other problems as well? And so, but most aren't trained that way.
Yeah. I mean, shit, I wish I had a natty, 950, 900. That'd be sweet.
Yeah.
That'd be sweet. For
I
50
messed
years.
mine up a long time ago, but that's just for his range though, or for his age. I mean, that's probably per whatever lab, it probably came up high, and it's still okay if prostate's not, you're not having any issues. There's no, he's doing his annual prostate exam. PSA is normal. If you're not seeing like crazy stuff happening like blood thickness and blood volume, but once again, they don't just, oh my God, what's going on?
I mean, to me, that's a win. I was like, damn, 900 like, natural? Fuck, that's great, man. Thanks for coming on, dude. It's been awesome having this conversation with you. I look forward to continuing my journey with you guys and, getting you to stay on my ass to turn me into that 3.0.
Well, I think we'll regroup this week.
We need to. Yeah. We need to.
Well, no, listen, you need to do that. You're like, I'm going to make you do that. So it's just whether you want to, I'll still message you but no, like let's just, and I think a lot of guys don't reach out and they don't ask for the help or they think it's fine and I'll deal with it and I'll push through it and I'm fine. But ultimately it's not fine, so but I try to simplify it. Let's break it down and let's just make it fit so it's consistent. I will say this, dude. I had somebody comment on one of my YouTube videos, man, and this is kind of crazy. I never heard this before, but they said, looking at you look like just a normal gym bro with all the muscles. Then you opened your mouth and I realized how smart you were. It's like, I've never had that before. I'm like, wow. Like at first I was offended. Then I was like, wow, that's kind of a cool compliment, right? I'm like, is that what people perceive me as? And, for the guy struggling, that's what I also want to bring it out to. Like right now, I'm not feeling my best, but there's probably a lot of people looking at me and going like, dude, you look good. And you're the goal.
You're somebody's goal, guys. You know what I mean? And what you have to understand is what matters is how you feel and what you can do to move yourself forward every single day. You need people in your life like Jeff that are going to help hold you accountable, know what you're capable of, and strategically get you there. Right. But also with some damn empathy, because like I'd never felt out of place at either one of your clinics. I'd never felt like I was being judged by anybody. It was always like this. Every time I would come in, it was like, damn, like you even look different than you did last week. Like what's going on? This is fantastic. It's a community. So for those of you that are, listening to this show, man, throw a Google search, T clinics, man, like check out my boy. You do ship across the United States, right? So I have certain clinics that are set up for out of state. That's kind of been a big thing over
the years. There's a lot of telemedicine places, but you know, I think we still try to go specific to the person, which a lot of them are just mills. But going back to what you said, just real quick, I want to highlight on that. Like, you know, comparison will crush your happiness, and run your own race.
Yeah.
Let's set goals per you, and let's tackle those goals, and let's stack wins, and ultimately you'll be surprised when you look back. It's just, you know, I think a lot of people just in the world we live, listen, I do it with like social media, and you see other businesses, and once I stop trying to compare myself to somebody else, and I'm just going to run my race, and you know, what happens, happens.
Yeah, that was like a big thing for me too. And I know we're running short on time, but like, I think I set my goal a little bit too egregiously.
Your expectations were high.
So high, dude. Like,
I mean, listen, it's nice to have those BHAG goals, right? Big, hairy, audacious goals. But you got to set, I'm a big into like, let's small mini goals. And if we start crushing those mini goals, like I said, it almost gets contagious, and it compiles over time. It's like, just, if you set it one big ass goal, you'll probably just might as well give up now.
Well, that's what was happening because like you were measuring me on a caliper at 7.
Yeah.
And then I would go to the DEXA and have my world freaking crushed. Yeah. And so like, that's one thing that I need help with you on. I want you to help me reestablish a goal on a DEXA. Yeah. Maybe it's 18, maybe it's 15.
Well, on DEXA, you got to remember, DEXA is always going to be to a decimal point. Everything, like, you know, I'll tell people out there is like, your measuring tool should just be a tool to track progress. Please just let it be a tool to track progress. You know, one of the most accurate would be a DEXA scan. But whether you're using an impedance, a 4-point impedance, a 2-point impedance, a caliper's only pinching sub Q, and depending on where you hold it, it's going to read different. So I always say that's not like the end all be all metric unless you are doing a DEXA. So DEXA, like if you're going to do a DEXA, that's probably the best, and work off that for a goal. But I think the world has been, especially with DEXA, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm like 6%, and you're not.
No, you're not.
No,
you're
not.
12 on a DEXA. 11.
Yeah, right now I'm probably about a 12 on a DEXA.
Because like last time I heard you were maybe like a 10 or 11.
Yeah, I think the lowest I got, now I did do a DEXA a couple years back before I got my own DEXA. Old machine, not kept up to date, had me at like a 5.9. I'm like, there's no way in hell. I was probably on my DEXA, I was probably maybe 9, and that was pretty lean. Yeah. But I was also like, my life was there was no balance.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
There was no balance in that.
And that's the thing, like this time around, like I'm really going to need your support with, it's like, what's the right goal, right? Like how do we manage that? Cause I am the way I am. Like I'm not going to come off of certain big hairy ass goals like you're talking about, but it's like really managing it to the point, because I think that's where I fell off. It was like, okay, like I'm never going to get the 12% on a DEXA. I'm done worrying about it. I'm never doing one of these again. And in the meanwhile, I'm wearing a large shirt, and I still am, but I had train tracks running up and down my arm. I was vascular, and I'm pissed about a DEXA where you're, you know, and you're one of the most skilled, because people say like calipers you got to watch out for, you know, because there's a lot of margin error. I'm like, not with this guy. Like every time we were doing it, you had to like, hold on, let me pinch again.
But remember, I would tell you too, like per this percentage, if you take it to a DEXA, you're going to probably, the leaner you are, there's less variance from a caliper to a DEXA. The larger you are, especially depending on the calipers, the sites, like I do a 9 site when we do one, but there's a lot of room for error on that. But also once you get that caliper, that's not your true body fat. Like usually I would say even on a low end, you might add 5 or 6% to correlate it over to a DEXA. Yeah. So like when you're like 3-4 on a caliper, you know, and that's like super lean. Nobody should get there unless you're like, you know, that's all you do on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. But you know, like take me a 3, you'll probably be at 8, 9, right? But as you get larger, that might be a 7, 8, 9, 10 from a caliper to a DEXA.
There was a larger variance, right? Because I was a 7, and I think
it depends on where you hold it. Yeah. If I'm pinching you in areas that you don't hold a lot of body fat, only a couple of them came up. Yeah. I could take the next guy who might be fatter in other areas that aren't getting calipered, and he's going to caliper much, much lower. So, or caliper much, much higher and look completely different. So once again, it's a measuring tool. No matter what tool you use, stay consistent with it and use that just as a gauge. But don't sit there and let that affect how you go about your goals. I always look as like, let's look for the wins. Am I building muscle? Am I dropping body fat? And whatever device or tool we're going to use, let's stay consistent and work off that.
Yeah, it's a good point, man. Well, thank you. Well, we'll get this train back rolling. And for everybody, check out my boy Jeff, T Clinics, Nuviva weight loss. If you have any questions on how to optimize your hormones or even be homeostatic with your hormones, drop them a phone call. And until next time, guys, stay determined.